Welcome to the Tow Club Industry Podcast. My name is Art, of course. Today, I'm excited to welcome today's guest. His name is Todd Leiss. I hope I pronounced that correctly,
Yes.
Todd. And Todd is very, very much involved in and around the towing industry. And I'm going to let him explain to our listeners exactly how involved he is. Todd, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Morning. Glad to be here. Yes, towers are a big part of my life. I was the traffic incident management coordinator for the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission since 2015. I worked for the Turnpike since 1999, but my job at the Turnpike is to manage the 22 towing companies we had on the Turnpike system. I would go out to a lot of the big crashes we had on the Turnpike, and I would say to my tow operators, tell me where to stand, so I'm not going to be in your road. I'm going to ask a lot of dumb questions. Hopefully, if you have time to answer them, answer them. If not, tell me to shut up and go away. And that's really, I've really learned to appreciate the hard work that towers do. And it's a very underappreciated industry.
That's really interesting, Todd. I want to remind the listeners, obviously, many of our guests, are either in towing or providing services to towing, but we don't often get the perspective from somebody like you that kind of, if forgive me if I'm wrong, but kind of oversees the
Yeah.
management of towing. And so your perspective is going to be something that's very refreshing for our listeners, and I certainly appreciate that. I wanted to start by asking you sort of your history and experience in and around the towing industry and how you sort of got here, if you could let the listeners know.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been an emergency responder all my life. Since 1982, I've been a firefighter, an EMT, a hazmat team member, a 911 operator, and I worked for the Turnpike since 1999. So we dealt with our tow trucks since 1999 on the Turnpike. And then in 2015, I became the manager of our towing program for the Turnpike. So again, 567 miles. We have 22 very, very, very good towing companies that we have contracts with. They have exclusive rights to any crash that occurs on the roadway. And so they do a lot of high speed recoveries, and we put a lot of pressure on our tow operators. So one of the first things I did after I got that role is I wanted to go out and learn more about what they do. So, I would visit them. I would go out to crash scenes, but I took Wreckmaster training. And why do I need to have Wreckmaster training? Because I want to have a little bit of knowledge, and I know you can get it from other sources as well. But I wanted to have some type of knowledge that I could go there and I could try to ask intelligent questions to the tow and recovery operator. So I took the 2-3, the 4-5 and 6-7. I took the air cushions course, and I really it was a great experience because I got to interact firsthand with a lot of tow truck operators from the towing industry that would help me. My knowledge is, I would like to say I'm book smart, but the practical hands-on experience from a towing operator perspective, the public and even my leadership had no idea of. And so I made our my leadership at the Turnpike also take Wreckmaster training, because we're the ones yelling, just hook up and yank, yank it and you'll get it off the roadway. And
Yeah.
they got to do the hands-on training, and we didn't go into a great deal of depth with them, but to have them actually have to have the controls in their hand and understand, it really made them, they've already respected the towers because we had that relationship with our towers, but it also gave them the opportunity to understand, like, hey, this is why we don't do just hook up and yank.
Sure.
This is why we don't get a scene cleared up in 10 minutes. You have a casualty that's off the roadway 40 yards in mud. And I'm thinking of an incident where we had a commercial vehicle loaded with watermelons, and it was 40 feet off the roadway, very rainy day in mud, and the tower was trying to recover the product for the customer, and they were trying to do it without damaging the load. And as I'm sure all your listeners can experience, something like that, it's going to be a labor intensive recovery if you have to offload that by hand.
Right.
So yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So it was
a trailer
definitely
full of watermelons. Yeah, that is not going to be something that's very easy to offload.
No. And if you're trying to save that load again for so I've really learned that way, and then from the other experience of having the insurance companies call in and complain about the tow truck operators and say,
Sure.
or, like, why is my bill so expensive? And I'm able to justify why the bill is so expensive, what the recovery was, and
Because
defend
you can,
our towers.
yeah,
So,
you can provide the regulatory, make them understand that hey, I am the regulatory oversight, and this is why we do what we do so that we can mitigate injury risks,
yep. Yeah.
further closing the road and whatnot. That's
And,
a
and,
interesting perspective there.
and that's why it's important to have a good towing company where, you could work, for me, whenever I go to a scene of an incident, I would say to the tow truck operator or whoever's in charge, tell me what your plan A, your plan B, your plan C is. I'm going to plan C is when everything goes wrong. How long is it going to take you to do this recovery? Because we always think we're going to do plan A, and if everything works out, we'll have this up right in 10 minutes. It's never going to work out right.
Sure.
So I could plan for plan C because I know that I could bring out extra resources, traffic control, lighting, whatever. Whereas plan A is nice to have, but it's that fairy tale you could ever sort of achieve.
It doesn't always work perfectly.
Yeah, and that's why you have to plan for the worst. And I said we'll plan for plan C, and I'll get extra personnel and extra equipment out here and extra safety out here. And then if you have it open in 10 minutes, good, I can cancel them. But at least I'm going to get them coming a while to help you out. They to me, we need to look at it. From the public sector needs to look at towers and get our legislative leaders and everybody to understand that the towers are our partners. They're not our enemies. They're on our side, and a good tower could save your butt. Definitely.
Oh, yeah.
For recovery.
Yeah.
So we need to have that relationship with them and get them to understand, that there's sometimes we use a towing rotation list to be fair.
Sure.
And we don't always have the most qualified towers, and it's that tends to be a problem because at times we want to be fair. I don't have a problem with a rotation list that has of qualified towers. I just don't think everybody needs to be on that list if they're not qualified with the proper
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I can't blame towers for their ambition, but I think it's important that if you decide to engage in potentially very risky services, that you get the proper training and you have enough respect for the safety mechanisms that are in place, that are imposed by, for example, somebody like you that's in charge of the turnpike, that's trying to make sure that, hey, I don't want guys getting hurt. I don't want traffic backed up more than it should be, or the road narrowed or closed more than it should be. There's got to be some sort of balance, and having the proper qualifications sounds like the right idea and the right approach.
Yeah,
obviously,
absolutely.
Particularly from your perspective, right? Like, because you're responsible for it.
Yeah, we want the tower to be out there wearing the proper PPE. We want them to be wearing high vis so that they're visible out there, not blending in with the tow truck, blending in with the scenery. We want them to work safe, work smart, and we are. I'm going to put a lot of pressure on you because we want the road cleared.
Yeah.
But as one of our contracted towers, your company's contracted with us and you're compensated for it because you get a lot more. You get all the recoveries for your area.
Yeah.
Recover. So
yeah, absolutely. That's where at least a certain percentage of their work comes from. So hopefully that amount of work is enough to compel them to invest in the training, to invest in doing things correctly, and to address any issues that you might bring up. For example, you mentioned that, hey, I get insurance companies calling me, and I don't want to be presumptive, but my guess is that they're calling to gripe about a bill or something of that nature.
The one company I could think of, they called up and complained, and why is this bill so high? And it was a recovery for a commercial vehicle that was hauling household chemical cleaners that was off the road down a 200-foot embankment. That was a very difficult recovery, and I joked with the two companies, and it was two of our, I consider two of my best towers out there, older gentlemen, probably in their 60s. And I told them, it was raining sideways on Memorial Day. And it's like, I said, I thought you told me you guys only do these recoveries when it's 75 degrees and sunny out. I said, now I'm standing out here in the rain and it's raining sideways. And it's like, I said, well, usually we only do recoveries on nice days. And it's like,
Sure.
I said, yeah,
Yeah.
but the company called up and complained about the bill. And it's like, and I said, the company wanted the load recovered. They didn't want to just, so you're picking up quart-sized bottles of chemical cleaner and saying this one's good, this one's bad. I said it's going to take time. I said you paid, $30,000 to clean up a $10,000 load, and I said that's your fault. That's not the tower's fault. They did what you wanted them to do. So
Which is protect the load. But
yeah,
also, the insurance company probably should consider that there are environmental factors with a load like
oh
that
yeah,
as well, right? So if you're doing something real herky jerky, now the risk becomes, hey, what happens to all these cleaners if we damage this load?
hmm
Does that penetrate the soil? Does it get into a waterway? Does it,
oh yeah, and it was right near
make
the
the
waterway.
road conditions more unsafe? So yeah, sometimes insurance companies, and I don't want to bash the entire industry, but sometimes from a claims perspective, they're looking to mitigate what they consider to be very high recovery bills. And I understand what their sort of mission is there,
Yeah.
but oftentimes they don't have all the context of the
Mhm.
job, or they're looking for more information to produce context. I've had experiences like that in the years as a tower myself, and I can appreciate their inquiries. I don't take it personal. I would like to suggest to
No.
towers to take it personal, but have the information to support what you did is the main advice I would give to towers. And in addition, I'd like to just mention there are outfits out there, I'm sure you're familiar with, that teach towers how to properly invoice for this type of work, how to properly tell the story, how to
Yes.
properly describe their services, when and what equipment they should be utilizing or trying to bring out in the event that they need support. So, there's resources out there. And another thing I want to remind you and the listeners is in the video description for this episode will be all of the links relevant to Todd's efforts and educational and Tim and all of that. So I encourage towers to utilize these resources.
Absolutely.
I wanted to, kind of follow up with, I wanted to know, because I know about Tim Heroes and I think it's awesome. I wanted to know what your goals are with Tim Heroes, um, how um, how you plan on allowing other people to be involved in the cause, or
Yeah.
how can other people be involved? And because towers are providing specialized work, and it's pretty evident to me that towers you know would be doing the right thing by utilizing some of these resources you provide. But can you shed a
Yeah.
little light on that?
Yeah. So when I retired from the Turnpike Commission a year ago, July of 2023, I formed my own nonprofit, which I called Tim Heroes, Traffic Incident Management Heroes Incorporated. So it's a 501c3 that was founded and organized in Pennsylvania. It's a tax exempt organization, and we do fundraisers and we take donations, and we have a website www.timheroes.org, and we provide free handout material for towers that talks about the move over law, talks about being a D driver, a drug, drunk, drowsy, distracted, just plain dumb, talks about putting early warning out. I go out and provide free in-person training uh, for organizations and groups. One of which I mentioned that I'll be doing a free training class, a TIM for Tower class, which is a national sort of certified course. Everybody that attends will get a free certificate after the class. Yeah, it will be emailed to them.
A
But
TIM
it's
certificate, like
a
a
TIM
traffic
certificate.
incident
Yep.
management certificate.
Mhm.
Very
That's
valuable. Yeah, very
Yep, and
valuable.
that's at the Baltimore Tow Show. So that will be, in November. I think it's a weekend. I'll be doing it Saturday morning, from 8 till noon, and I will provide our course that we developed. So it's the federal highway course, but it has a towing spin to it that talks about what towers need to do specifically to keep themselves safe. We'll talk about the value of uh, high vis. We'll talk about proper PPE. We'll talk about early warning and a lot of the things that we don't necessarily do because sometimes as towers and any kind of responder, we get on scene and say we're only going to be here for 5 minutes, so we're not going to put anything out. but then that 5 turns into 10, 10 turns into 20, and soon we're a half hour to an hour into it. And man, if we would have only put out a cone, or if we would only put out a flare, or did something to let somebody know we're out there, we could have improved our safety so much more.
Gotten
And
people to slow down maybe
yeah,
because they can understand that, hey, there's an incident up ahead sooner as opposed to later, right? When they're traveling at a really high rate of speed and all of a sudden they're slamming on their brakes. That's obviously not the scenario that is ideal, right? So
yeah. I'm a huge advocate of uh, tow truck operators and recovery operators wearing helmet and head protection at incidents. And it's and I've taught that in my classes, and I've taken helmets out to my classes, and I got a call from a tow truck, the owner of a towing company here in Pennsylvania, uh, probably a couple months ago now. And Jerry, owner of Leiss Towing in New Cumberland, and he goes, Todd, it was probably 11 o'clock at night where he texted me and he said, "You saved my life." He goes, I had an accident today in which I was wearing my helmet. I was thrown in the air probably 14 feet and came down on my head and my neck. And the doctor said, without that helmet, I would be dead. And he thanked me, and we had a good conversation about it. And I met Jerry through one of his drivers having a very horrific crash that uh, makes the rounds all the time on social media. It's a commercial vehicle goes up the bed of John's truck, and John takes off running, and John was doing exactly what he was supposed to do. I see something coming, I take off running. And so I use that in my training. But just to hear from Jerry about how happy he was and how happy his wife was, and how the doctor said, again, if he wouldn't have had that helmet on, he would have been killed instantly, was just such a good feeling that, yeah, we're making a difference, and we're doing something. So um, I know people are resistant to a lot of this stuff. I don't want to wear a high vis vest because it's going to get dirty.
yeah.
I don't want to wear a helmet because it would make me look dumb. I don't care if I'm out on the roadway. I'm protecting this head. I want to make sure I'm doing everything I can. So
Yeah, I gotta believe, Todd, that for you personally, hearing stories like that is definitely something that's gratifying, right? You want to make sure that you're doing all this effort. And when you hear a story like that, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's got to be pretty gratifying, right?
yeah,
Because
it is,
you're
because
advocating for these things.
yeah. So far in 2024, we've lost 26 emergency responders in the United States to struck by crashes. Police this year are leading uh, the number. They have 13 this year, but tow truck operators and recovery operators are right there behind them.
Right.
And it happens. But we have 2 emergency responders struck every day in the United States. We have an emergency responder struck and injured every 2 days, and all of us could think of somebody in the towing industry that has been hit and they're still recovering, um, and may never go back into towing, or have the
Okay.
exit. I was just sitting here. I just turned 60 a couple of days ago, and I'm thinking, like, man, I got a lot of aches
Happy
and pains.
belated. Happy
Yeah,
belated
thank you.
birthday, Todd. Awesome.
It's like I'm thinking these people that live to be 100. It's like that's not for me. Yeah, I'm good. It's been a good run, but it is. It's difficult, and I can imagine that somebody. I could think of probably 5 tow operators here locally in Pennsylvania that have been struck, that talk about
Yeah.
their pain, and even the mental anguish of having, now I got to support my family. I got to go back out there. You know, Well, and
Right.
and that person with one tow truck, the tow truck gets totaled, and now how am I supposed to keep my
Earn.
business afloat? Yeah,
Yeah.
because
All right.
again, it costs so much. So we're trying to get the public to understand that. So that's one of the things I do with Tim
Sure.
Heroes as well, is educate the public as to why they need to do. So we're approaching it from both sides. We want the responders to know they're responsible, because nothing makes me upset more that somebody is very vocal and they'll get on social media and they'll say nobody's doing anything about slow down, move over. And I approach them and say, what are you doing about slow down, move over?
Yeah.
Have you told anybody about it? Have you attended
Have
any
you
events?
shared it?
Yeah.
Have you have
Have
you
you taken the
advocated
training you're
for it?
supposed to?
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you put early, that is just one step in everything that we need to do. So
Right.
again, October 19th at the Pennsylvania Turnpike Building, 700 South Eisenhower Boulevard in Middletown, Pennsylvania, right outside of Harrisburg. We're doing a big move over day, National Move Over Day, festival, we're calling it. We're going to have
It's awesome.
handouts, rides, all kinds of equipment there. We're teaming up with the Pennsylvania Turnpike, my former uh, employees. They're going to have stands. We're going to have free food for people. We'll have things, and the whole purpose of that is just to raise awareness. So
Yeah. Thank you for mentioning that, Todd, because those are the kinds of um, events that I think people should be tuning into. And, I wanted to mention, our industry is a very small industry, so to speak. And, we want to wish a speedy recovery to a friend of the show, Tim Ward. You may know him out of
yes,
Texas.
yep,
He's currently recovering from very severe injuries sustained in a towing accident. So we wish him well. We encourage people to go to our pages and donate to his recovery efforts. And again, and I'm sure Tim may be listening to this. I'm sure he appreciates your efforts as well, Todd. I just wanted to bring
yeah.
that up.
Well,
Just
yeah,
because
definitely.
you're in Pennsylvania doesn't mean what you do does not affect other areas. So it's very well. I think it should be better received. I did want to ask you, are there some influential I haven't had my coffee yet. Are
Yes.
there influential social media personalities that you follow or know that you wanted to mention here that you think are doing good advocacy work for Slow Down, Move Over?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of them out there. John DeWeese, Toe Ninja. John's a great friend, and
Yeah, we
if you've
had
ever
him
met
on the
John,
show. He's an awesome guy.
he's passionate about it, and he's done a lot of stuff for us. Tony the Toe Man's out there, and
Yeah.
you have to hook up with you, and whether you are 100%, and all these people that are out there doing good things, they all have their distractors, and there's people that are like, oh, well, they're just doing it to show off, and you know, people don't realize the time and effort and the personal expense that some of these
Oh yeah.
people put into this,
Oh, yeah.
and I started Tim Heroes as a nonprofit because a lot of times as a turnpike guy, I would, people would say, hey, can I donate to your cause? Well, I couldn't accept the money, so so it's like, no, that's okay. And then I would be putting my own money in and spending thousands of dollars every year to try to do the stuff that I wanted to do. And
Yeah.
even to change legislation, we got the Move Over Law in Pennsylvania passed. So it's a
What-
$500 fine for the first offense and a
Right.
1,000 for the second. But again, that's great, but we have to still, keep
Yeah.
pushing that and letting people know that that's a thing. So
Absolutely, Todd. And I want to remind towers that of the benevolency of this type of work. There is no financial windfall for Todd or anybody else who's advocating for slow down, move over, for operator safety, for public motorist safety. I mean, this people are doing this because it's the right thing to do. And so hopefully, towers can sort of change their opinion sometimes when they see somebody on social media trying to provide advocacy for these efforts. uh, I get discouraged personally when I see, for example, people who are, for lack of a better term, hating on people or trying to, cast them as somebody who's looking for attention or
mm,
financial gain from this. There is no financial gain from this. This
no.
is all about, a benevolent effort to reduce, when we had Toe Ninja on, one of the things that we discussed was, and I know you probably feel the same way. I don't as much as I want this to be true, I don't believe that no one is ever going to get hit again on the side of the road.
Mm,
However, our goal should be, can we get this to taper downwards?
yeah.
And if this advocacy leads to that, then we won. And that's what we should be looking for. Not only the fatal incidents, but the incidents in which somebody's injured, like our friend Tim Ward. I don't ever want to see that happen again. But we have to
No.
shoot for lowering the curve, and the only way we can do that is through awareness. So,
And that's 100% because I always tell people, and so I post every time responders hit and kill in the United States. I post as part of my role. I serve as deputy director of training for the Emergency Responder Safety Institute. So we have a website, respondersafety.com, and on that website we list all the responders that are killed. And I update a video. I make a video on that website. If you go to the respondersafety.com, search struck bys for the past since 2018, I have made a video up for every responder that has been hit and killed. So it lists it just runs through the music, and it just shows the responders, all responders that have been hit and killed, including tow truck operators. And, you know, every year, we're up to 26 this year so far. And my leadership of the Turnpike would reach out to me after these and says, I know this is bothering you. I know this is working on your nerves, and you're dealing with the stress because all the stuff that you're doing, we still have people getting hit. And he says, and he goes, do you want to talk about it? And I said, I do. And I said, I do get discouraged, and I do get sad, and I do get more frustrated and pissed off that the fact that we keep having people hit. But I said, but then I stop and take a breath, and I look at it like, even if what we're doing changes one person's driver behavior, that's one responder, one tow truck operator that may be saved because of that. So I'm not looking at how many people have been injured or killed. Yeah, I want that number to go down, but we can't celebrate until that number stays at zero.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, Todd, the decisions that you've made to use technology to spread awareness kind of leads me into my next point, is now that you're doing this and you've developed what I believe, and I wanted to congratulate you on, is a sizable following that's using this material, or at least has eyeballs on this material. I wanted to ask your opinion, because technology is a big and a very broad term, but I wanted to ask your opinion. How or what do you see in terms of the growth and change in technology? How do you see it? I mean, very broadly, the towing industry, but how do you see it in your home market? For example, we have our transportation in our country, to varying degrees, depending on the locale, is now really rapidly evolving. In the metropolitan areas, probably more rapidly than the sort of suburban and or rural areas. But you see things like electric vehicles now that change the way towers have to deal with first responder type accidents. It also changes the way they have to store the vehicles. We've had many guests on, such as a guest we had on early on in the podcast, that provided a containment system for the storage of electric vehicles in the event that there was going to be a thermal event while at the facility. But in your sort of area, how has that changed how you approach things?
I think we need to look at the towers as a partner and bringing them into the conversation. And for that to happen, the tow truck operators, or the owners, the operators, sometimes have to change their culture and understand that they may be talking to somebody, they may be talking to a legislator, that you can't just, I mean, if you and I are talking or out on the street, or if I'm talking to one of my tow operators, I could joke around. I could say whatever I want to. They're going to say whatever they want to back. But you have to understand who you're talking to and who your audience is. So if I'm talking to some of my Turnpike leadership, you got to tamp that down and talk in such a way that we have to remember what we want to say and what we want to do to them. So technology, I think, there's so much technology out there. There's digital alerting for tow truck operators to let somebody know that you're out there. There's one of the things that I think we need to look at. We talk about lighting color and lighting, what kind of lights we have on our tow truck, but we have to look at how bright they are, and that more is not better. So we have to take that look. And I always recommend doing my trainings that for any responder, to put a person in high vis and have them stand next to a tow truck or their emergency response vehicle, put your lights on and see if you can see them. And if you can't, then your lights are too bright,
Right.
and turn some of the lights down. So, diamond grade reflectite that a lot of these companies are selling reflects too much light, that we found through a U.S. Fire Administration study. So even though that's the latest, greatest, that everybody wants to sell it to you because that's the latest, greatest, it reflects too much light. So you need to look at that, and you need to do your research, and you need to understand what technology could help you and what technology is going to, there are reputable people out there selling you stuff, and there's some people out there that are trying to sell you stuff that may not work for you. So look at it, investigate it, and do. I'm doing a video shoot for the respondersafety.com next Friday night that we're looking at a vehicle that we retrofitted with some of the latest, greatest technology, and I'm going to be the host. We're going to do a video shoot that we're going to do a walk around it and say, this may be for you. Do we have cameras in our trucks now, front and rear facing cameras, so that if something happens that we can do this? What kind of lighting do we have out there? What are we wearing on our person? Are we wearing, a personal protection light? There's some companies out there. I don't want to name the companies because I don't know if you want me to, but people could look up those companies and find out what companies are good out there. Digital learning, there's a couple companies that do these, but just understand that you need to, there's so much technology for, I don't want to put out a flare because chemical flares could be bad. Well, there's electronic flares. There's now folding traffic cones that take up very little space on your rig that are very easy to put out. And, I've made a suggestion to the one company I deal with here. They said, well, if I put that out, it's going to take me a little bit to now have to walk back and retrieve it. So I showed them, I said, attach a string to it. And when you're done, you could pull it back to your truck. You don't have to walk there. It's, that string's going to stay there. It's a folding traffic. And I said, if that traffic cone breaks, I said, I'll give you the guarantee that the company will replace it for you for free. I said, that's coming from me. And if they don't, I will personally replace it because I've worked with the company that developed them, know how. I've broken 38 of them because they asked me to try to break these, and I've hit them with my car and I've done everything. Right. So I know they stand up to stuff. So
they work well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have to look at what's going to work for you, but understand that I think the status quo, companies that invest in their personnel, in their message, in their equipment, not only their towing equipment, but other equipment beyond that, the technology to keep their drivers safe. The ones that, I am wearing a class 3 high vis vest because that's what industry standard says I should be wearing to be more visible. I get it that, I've had responders say to me, well, it's going to get dirty. It's a $30 vest. Charge every customer an extra $5, wear it 6 times and throw it away and get another one. Because because it's not that, in the grand scheme of things, it's not that much money. And I get it that we have some low overhead, but and people always say to me, well, that vest isn't magic. It's not. I said, if that vest gives me 8 to 10 seconds more visibility before, and somebody has a chance to swerve away from me, I'll take that up every day, all day.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah.
In my training that I do, I show a lot of photos, a lot of video of people not wearing vests and how they blend in with the equipment or blend in with the roadway. And, I want to, hey, I'm out there, when I worked for the Turnpike would buy me my high vis stuff. I'm a fat man. I was dressed up like the sun out there. You were going to see me,
right.
And it just makes sense because at the end of the day, it's not your employer that's, yes, there are good employers that are going to suffer if you're hit. But at the end of the day, I'm not doing it for me. I'm doing it for my family.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to understand too.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, exactly. I mean, what's important is getting home. And, since we're on the subject of technology a little bit, I wanted to ask your opinion on, because I try to follow the technology in the industry as much as possible. And obviously there's a ton of changes going on. There's, like, we were saying earlier, electric vehicle adoption, but in terms of just like safety, how do you feel about Haas Alert? Because it's something that's I'm very curious about, and I think it's just a great,
I am the Haas Alert's biggest fan. I have been working with Haas Alert. I found out about Haas Alert probably back in 2018, 2019 when they first started coming, and they were really not being built for DOTs to be involved. And we reached out to Corey and Jeremy, who were pretty much Haas Alert at the time, the owner, and I said to them, like, we want to incorporate them into our Turnpike vehicles. And they said, and at the time they really didn't do a whole lot with the DOT vehicles. And I said, but we want you to do this. So they came and we figured out how to make it work for us. And right now, the Turnpike has them in close to 200 of their vehicles. Every class I teach about Haas Alert. And there are other companies out there, but Haas is the company that I have worked with for a long time. It's funny because Corey, who's the founder of the company, had just texted me the other day because one of my compadres were out doing doing a class in California. He goes, "Are you in California?" I said, "No, I'm in Orlando." I said we split, and I ended up in Orlando. I said, but I said if you guys were in, I said I should have came out there. You guys would have bought me supper. I'm like,
Nice.
man, I could have ate.
Yeah.
But yeah, we need to look at those technologies and understand. People are like, well, Haas Alert, it doesn't get everybody to move over. No, but nothing's going to get everybody. There's
No.
not 100 there. So if right now Haas is in Waze, so if Waze is 20% of the map users, and if it's in
Right.
Apple Maps, and Apple Maps is 20 or 30%, that's still 50% of the people who are moving over. And then what happens if you see that car in front of you moving over for
Yeah.
somebody? You're going to move over. So that
Yeah.
still cuts down by 50 to 60%
100%.
of the people that are moving over for us. Yeah. So yeah,
100%.
I love Haas Alert. The people
Yeah.
are great. The customer service is great. I'm sure there's people listening that says, they're not any good, but this is my opinion. And I have worked with them, probably on a weekly basis since for the past 5 years, 6 years, 7 years.
Well, Todd, we'd like to get them on the show.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
if I can compel you to
I will
help
put you in
us
touch with
contact
somebody
them.
today.
I've spoken with Devin over at Haas Alert. She's a fantastic woman. And me personally, I'm rooting for them because it's going to take thinking outside the box in order to spread the awareness. And I do want to remind the audience, as towers, and because I'm a small tower myself, it's important that we understand that just because something doesn't fix the entire problem right away doesn't mean it's not worthwhile. And that applies to slow down, move over, the type of equipment that we were using. That applies to, the discussion surrounding electric vehicles, for example. It's, people are going to adopt these things, and if there's a marketable or a market percentage of improvement in whatever it is, in whatever sector it is, or whether it's transportation and safety, it is worthwhile. Because in the case of slow down, move over, the one thing that I know for sure is you just rattled off some numbers about Waze and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't need to be 100% to reduce the chances of somebody getting struck. And as I mentioned earlier, and as you mentioned earlier, we need to get this to come down. And we should be having our eyes on these statistics on an annual basis. And these things are going to help.
Yeah, the number, there's a tow truck operator killed one every 6 days, has been a number that's been out there for years and years and years. And it was put out by AAA years ago. And the number wasn't, and I hate to say this because I'm sure that we're going to get a lot of hate for this, but it wasn't accurate then and it's not accurate now. There's a responder killed every 6 days. I said, but that's all disciplines right now. And we have the stats. And if you go to respondersafety.com, our struck by page, we list the names of struck by of every person that is struck by. I have a map on that website that lists the struck bys and shows you a map of Pennsylvania, or the map of the United States that shows you the struck bys. Everyone who's been killed since 2015 and struck by accident in the United States, every responder. If you click on them, it will bring up a picture of them, bring up the company they work for, when they got hit, a news story, and give you a little brief history of what it has. And that's something I do on my own time because, again, we need to raise awareness.
We're going to provide the link to that information in the video description. I want to remind the listeners, Todd, thanks so much for that. Look, I've taken a lot of your time. I really appreciate you coming on. We're going to do what we can as an organization and as somebody who's active on social media to not only spread your message, but to also shine some light on the other players in the social media space that are bringing attention to this issue. We obviously are in the industry as a software provider. As a small tower myself, I'm in the industry. Our organization as a software provider is going to be very diligent with respect to the type of things that we can do from our perspective to help towers not only get this information, but spread the message and encourage people to be advocates. Encourage all towers that are adjacent, even the people adjacent to the space, the equipment providers, the people like you're in charge of the turnpike. We need all of these people in the industry and adjacent to the industry, vendors to the industry, what have you, to be a part of this message. And again, another reminder to the audience, if you aren't willing to know, please don't tow. Todd,
Yeah.
thanks. Appreciate it.